over the weekend, I was keeping track of all this, watching the Twins and the White Sox, the Lynx. Now, that was something that usually doesn't happen in Minnesota sports. The Lynx blowing a 14-point lead to lose a game the other day. But losing is a thing that happens all the time here. And there was a short video of a Chicago Cubs pitcher losing his mind after throwing at Yasiel Puig. And I decided I'm going to make a little joke about this. It's what you do on Twitter. It's not too serious of a time in our lives in the middle of July. So I'm going to make a little joke. And I said, this is what I look like anytime someone said Teddy Bridgewater was not good in 2015. I look like Pedro Strop being all mad and yelling at Yasiel Puig.
Pointing.
Trying to make a joke, okay?
All right.
So, of course, this ignites a fire of people yelling at each other about whether Teddy Bridgewater or Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback and whether Teddy Bridgewater was actually good in 2015, which I think we've pretty much resolved with all the winning and the coaches who want Teddy Bridgewater and teammates who liked him and the first round draft status and everything else. He's pretty good at football. So that's not even really a debate anymore, even though that's what happened. But it also resulted in one particular tweeter telling me that I should just stop talking about Teddy Bridgewater. It's like, it's over. Let it go. Stop talking about him. And so, Judd, I started thinking about it a lot with Teddy and what the next conversation is with him. And I think it's how much his knee injury really impacted this franchise, that the full ripple effect will, I think, be over with the Kirk Cousins era. Like, once Kirk Cousins is done being a quarterback here, then it's probably time that we say, okay, the ripple effect is done. That era is over with. But right now, we are still very much in his injury changed the entire trajectory of this franchise at the quarterback position, and it's impacted them every single season since. And as we go into another Super Bowl or bust type of year, and a year where Kirk Cousins could become the long-term franchise quarterback, I think that we're not done with that Teddy Bridgewater conversation.
I would say this, and I don't know if this man is going to coach the Vikings for 1 more year, 5 more years, 8 more years. I don't know. As long as Mike Zimmer is the head coach of the Vikings, Teddy will always be present in the discussion because he was Zim's guy. And I couldn't have fully appreciated that the day that he got hurt. Now, we knew that Mike loved him. We knew that without a doubt. But I couldn't have fully appreciated his impact on his head coach until seeing how said head coach dealt with the rest of the quarterbacks that came after.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Mike loved him because I think Mike said, I hate quarterbacks and I love this kid. It was really weird. But my appreciation for that didn't become complete until Case Keenum. And we're all saying that year, what a great pop-up. This is so much fun. And Mike's like, no, it's going to end badly. And Kirk Cousins, I guarantee you, Mike might like him as a person. I have no idea, no clue. But as a player, I think he's like, I got to put up with this crap, right? Teddy, from a personal perspective, as a human being, and probably more importantly in Mike's mind also, from a playing perspective, as a conservative but smart and talented quarterback, was the perfect player at a position that Mike Zimmer across the board, I think, really does despise. So I don't think this discussion is completely dead until Zim walks out that door at some point in time.
So there's a ripple effect of, you could just kind of do the tangible of, okay, you go to Sam Bradford, you trade away that first round pick, which they still in a way feel the effects of, because that first round pick, whomever it would have been on a rookie contract. So if it was at a key position, say, you would have, let's even say they drafted the guy Philadelphia pick, Derek Barnett. You probably don't keep Everson Griffin at a huge dollar amount after last year because you would have a rookie on a rookie deal. And there are lots of other things that could have happened there too, an offensive lineman and so forth. So you could go through the direct impacts of, they get Sam Bradford, then it goes to Case Keenum, and then it goes to Kirk Cousins and all that. And then I've been having fun thinking about all the other teams that there's some sort of impact too, like the Denver Broncos. They pick up Case Keenum. They would have never done that. Arizona probably doesn't pay $20 million for Sam Bradford if he didn't turn around his reputation by playing really well for the Minnesota Vikings. So there's a lot of fun things that you can do with that, and I'm working on that for an article. But the point that you're making, I think, is one where it still has maybe the second biggest impact is how everyone viewed Bridgewater. And it's almost like first girlfriend compared to every other one that you're going to compare every other girl you meet to your first love. And this is for people, not us, who didn't marry their first girlfriends like we did.
Yeah, this is for
ordinary
people.
Other people.
The ordinary guys, not us.
Right. Who
the
are
outliers.
able to get multiple girlfriends.
We are the
lives.
outliers, I hope.
But think about it this way. If you are Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Kyle Rudolph to some extent with this, a lot of the guys on the defense, your Anthony Barr and your Mike Zimmer. So Mike Zimmer, his first quarterback is Teddy Bridgewater, and he's everything that Mike Zimmer wanted. He's the leader, and he's the person that gets everybody to raise their play around him. He executes the offense exactly how he's asked to do it, but he can make plays that go off schedule. He could run with the ball at his best. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, accuracy-wise, under pressure by Pro Football Focus. He was one of the best on third downs.
Everything the head coach desired.
Yep, exactly. So they could run the ball a lot with Adrian Peterson and not turn it over.
Yep.
But then if they got in third and long, Teddy Bridgewater could keep them moving.
Yep.
It was exactly what Mike Zimmer wanted. So every quarterback who came after that for the head coach was, here's Keenum taking too many risks. I'm a little scared by that. You're throwing way too many footballs up in the air, even though they all worked out that year. And then with Kirk Cousins, you're turning the ball over too much early in the season. You're turning the ball over too much. And somebody, actually, Eric Eager, our friend from Pro Football Focus, I believe it was, shared a statistic with me that Kirk Cousins, as he went along in the season, his big-time throws, the tight window throws down the field, went way down. And I think in part because Mike Zimmer was telling him, stop turning the ball over, stop taking risks, stop throwing interceptions. And it got in Kirk Cousins' head a little bit. And in the locker room perspective, Cousins is a very different person from Teddy Bridgewater. He's a very different person from a lot of alpha male quarterbacks.
He is a corporate quarterback. Teddy was anything but that.
And I also think that he does not relate to people the same way that Teddy Bridgewater did. Yeah. I wrote a big piece about this at one point where I just went to different guys and said, hey, how did Teddy Bridgewater impact you as a player? And a lot of guys talked about how in his area of the locker room, he would bring over guys who were 7th round picks, who were rookies, or guys who wouldn't make the team.
It's Vlad Ducas's team.
And that's right.
Which he was actually being very sincere about, because the majority of players who would say that, you would be like, you're full of BS.
So what's interesting to me here about this and why it's not to be let go is that it's the reverberations of Teddy Bridgewater are still
passionate about
I just smacked the mic. The reverberations of him as a leader and as a person in the locker room and as a player, because if you think about the opposite directions of these two guys, where Bridgewater would kind of be big in the big times, and the statistics back this up, where he was biggest in the big times, in big situations, what they saw from Cousins last year, I'm not saying this won't ever happen because Cousins is extremely talented, but last year alone, that sample alone was national TV games where he didn't play well. And the last thing they saw from him was week 17, a complete no-show for them to miss the playoffs. And with Bridgewater, every time they played a big game in 2015, he seemed to step up. Every time they were down by a score in the fourth quarter, he seemed to step up and make plays. So that locker room, and this is not fair to Kirk Cousins, but it's just the fact is they look at some of that stuff, the intangible stuff and the situational stuff, and how Bridgewater was just conservative enough to not turn it over, but could step up when they needed him to. They look at that, and then they look at Kirk and go, well, you're not like that. You're not like that guy that we all liked here in 2015.
In the course of the 2015 season, how many times, and I'm not talking games, I'm talking times, individual times, do you think that Teddy did something where Mike said, oh, God, no? So, I would say it was a handful of times, probably.
Was it 2015 he tried the left-handed pass, or was that 2014?
That might have been 2014. But anyway, but the point being is Zimmer loved the kid because he knew what he was going to get from his personality, from his demeanor, from his playing. And I will give you the thing that if Mike was not in love with Teddy yet, he was for sure after. This is a team that went through 2015 training camp. Offense geared towards, and it should have been the QB, right? So everything is geared towards young QB, successful as possible. What can we do? And they got to game 1 in San Francisco, and it's a disaster. And Peterson doesn't like the fact that they're in shotgun or pistol formation.
Sure, yeah.
And clearly behind the scenes went and complained loudly. Because I believe by week 2, it had all changed. Mm-hmm. And now the offense was geared towards your aging, not as good as he once was, running back. I don't remember once Teddy saying, what's going on here? Now, he might have privately, but think about that. Think about how many quarterbacks would have sat there and been quiet and been like, oh, that's fine. Let's deviate towards a position that is, by the way, going out of style here with an aging player. How many quarterbacks would have pulled aside a reporter, an ESPN person, whatever, and said, what the hell, off the record, what the hell are these people doing to me?
Yeah.
And the fact that kid put up with that and then succeeded and did his best. And Peterson was good, but guess what? That's one of the most lame brain ideas I've ever seen. No, seriously, to morph your offense to your running back when your quarterback is young and needs your help at every turn. And by the way, it was crystal clear what was going to make Teddy as successful as possible. And he got the rug pulled out from under him that season and was told, be as successful as possible. If you're the head coach, you fall in love with that player instantly, and that's a quarterback.
Yeah,
that's not a secondary guy who you like. That's one of the most important positions on that team. Was willing to accept a running back who, by the way, turned out to be incredibly selfish. Started to leak stuff about when he was going to come back. Seriously, think about all that, and think about how disgusted Mike seemed, rightfully so. And meanwhile, one of the most key positions on that team keeps his mouth shut, does everything right, and they get to the playoffs.
And not only that, but they had one of the worst offensive lines in the league that year. It was worse that year, objectively speaking, than it was last year. I mean, you had Matt Khalil and TJ Clemmings as your starting tackles. Brian O'Neill and Riley Reif as your starting tackles are way better than Matt Khalil and TJ Clemmings. That's about the lowest bar you could ever set. Matt Khalil is still in the league, but probably shouldn't be.
Houston now?
And TJ Clemmings, I think he got a couple of snaps with Oakland last year.
Chicago signed him.
But,
Chicago he is signed with the Bears.
He's still
Bring him back.
Around.
Bring him back and play him here.
But the point is not so much that Bridgewater was just a good quarterback. And any deep dive on this, and I've even worked with the Pro Football Focus guys on this to look a little bit deeper. And I did a thread about it on Twitter about some of the underlying stats. If you throw out the touchdown statistic, which they ran the ball. It's pretty simple. They just ran the ball in the red zone. Maybe Seattle should have taken that model. I'm just saying in the Super Bowl.
No. You call for a pass every time.
But here's a good stat to just sort of crystallize it for you is when he had a clean pocket, so no pressure at all. Teddy Bridgewater was ranked between Ben Roethlisberger and Aaron Rodgers in his quarterback rating when he had a clean pocket. It just didn't happen that often because they had a very poor offensive line. But when he got his chance to throw, he was very, very good that season. But that, I think, matters less and less as we go along about what the big picture was on Teddy Bridgewater, how good he could have been. Was he growing the arm strength, which it certainly looked like he was going into that 2016 preseason, and much, much more about his personality and about how he related to people and made people better. And you're talking about the coaching situation where, if somebody's going to go out there and have to deal with Adrian Peterson's massive ego, that Peterson is acting like 2012, but it's not 2012 anymore, and yet you don't hear a peep from the quarterback. It's also that he, in that 2017 locker room, played such a huge role. And that's the team, when Anthony Barr comes back to this team, he's thinking 2017. He's thinking that's what we're capable of. Brian Robinson said he's never seen a locker room in his entire career like 2017. And I agree. In my reporting career, I've never seen anything like it. And when Teddy that year would pull Adam Thielen aside, this is what Adam told me, he would pull him aside and show him things on tape and be like, hey, I bet the quarterback was actually thinking this on that play. And maybe if you adjust yourself a little bit, that you're going to help out Case Keenum. And he pulled Case Keenum aside in Washington, D.C. and said, hey, I saw this read of this safety and what this happened. And he threw a touchdown to Stephon Diggs because of it. that type of stuff is what they remember. It's not even so much, the throw to Kyle Rudolph at the end of 2015 in the playoff game that sets them up for the field goal they should have made. It's so much more about when you're Adam Thielen, and that's how Teddy Bridgewater was with you. And he also got along extremely well with Case Keenum.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy is kind of embarrassing you on national TV on the sideline, showing you how to run routes. I mean, he's going to be a professional, so he's going to be great, Adam Thielen. But everybody else sees that too. It's not just Thielen. I mean, everybody in that locker room sees that too. And if Bridgewater had never been here and Kirk Cousins came after Matt Castle or something, I think that stuff like that would be
guys might leave
a little more. Well, maybe they would leave, but a little more shrug your shoulders at. But it's from what they saw before, I think still matters.
The 2017 dynamic that stops me, because this is super rare and it speaks to the entire culture there at the time, is the fact that Keenum, the game that against the Bengals where Teddy got in, and keep in mind, this was a situation where there were people pushing for him to play again.
Oh, yeah.
For Keenum to be benched. So this was not a nice.
In the crowd, they were yelling Teddy, Teddy at the beginning of that game when he struggled.
So this was not like a nice little story. This was a threat to what Keenum had done. And they take Keenum out and put Teddy in. And if I'm not mistaken, Keenum starts doing the skull clap and starts chanting.
He's the one who started
it. But think about how many quarterbacks who were being threatened for their job. That and they're having this great year would actually buy in and be like, this is fantastic. That does not happen in pro sports.
Very few. Yep.
It might happen in college sports, might happen in high school sports, but pro sports.
And this I know also, that there were people in the locker room who thought Bridgewater should have taken over.
Well, didn't Mike call a meeting of the veteran committee to talk about this?
Everson Griffin told us that 2017 that they talked it over as leaders of the team and decided that they should stay with Case because they were rolling. And ultimately, you get to the NFC Championship game. So it wasn't like a huge mistake or anything.
Right.
I will always wonder if they should have put Sam Bradford in the second half of the NFC Championship game, but that's nitpicking.
But the fact that Mike did that speaks to where Mike's heart was.
Sure. Yeah.
Like if you're not going to make that change, you don't ask your veterans.
Right.
If you are tempted to, you ask your veterans.
And the fact that they overcame that pretty easily. I had heard from someone else, not a player on that 2017, that they were stunned that how much Zimmer was publicly critical of Case Keenum. They couldn't believe it. And and neither could we.
Lump
honestly.
us in with that group.
Honestly, yeah, we couldn't either.
I've never seen it before.
But it didn't affect the locker room at all that he had done that. In 2016, when he criticized Barr, it was a huge deal. But the 2017 locker room was just something very unique and special. Terrence Newman was still there.
And Case could take it as well. To his credit, Case could take it.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins, if you did that to Kirk, he'd be lost.
Right. And
you'd lose him instantly.